So when you look at, is it easier to go and open up a market in, let's say, Brazil or in Central America? I think sometimes it's good to think again, because the market here actually is very U.S. friendly, very close to the U.S., and offers significant opportunities. Looking very quickly at each of the countries in Central America, Guatemala has the largest economy in Central America, 1/3 of the GDP, almost completely privatized. I'd say their biggest problems are that their tax collections are such a small percent of gross domestic product. Honduras, we say competitive labor costs. Some people may say cheap labor, but I think it's very competitive labor costs. The picture there is a picture of one of the maquilas in the San Pedro Sula area. The U.S. is by far and away the largest trade partner with Honduras. The maquila industry is big there. The maquila industry is what makes a lot of U.S. T-shirts, textiles for the U.S. market. It's 100% exported back to the U.S. Puerto Cortez is the largest port in Central America, located near the industrial city of San Pedro Sula. And I think the one thing that's important to keep in mind about Honduras is the capital is in Tegucigalpa, the main business center, San Pedro Sula, so it really is a two-city country. El Salvador, this is a picture of El Salvador's airport where TACA, the regional Central American airline, has its headquarters. It's the smallest country in Central America, the most densely populated. I have on the slide there over 1.5 million Salvadorans in the U.S. There's probably closer to 2 million now in the U.S., some legal, others illegal. Foreign trade grew tremendously since the Civil War ended in 1992 and continues to grow. They've had a very aggressive trade policy, which has led to rapid economic development here. And it is the only country in Central America that is dollarized. On to Nicaragua. As you look at that picture there of downtown Managua, one of the things you see is a lot of green space. And I think what you could infer from that is there's a lot of room for development. There's a lot of opportunities there, which I would say there certainly are. Nicaragua is rich in natural resources. It lacks diversity in development. I think on the positive side, the government's becoming more stable. They're phasing out any type of price controls. They're privatizing more, and it's one of the safer countries in Central America. We look at Costa Rica. Costa Rica has really been different from any of the other countries in Central America. Back in the early slides when I said, kind of alluded to some of the problems in Central America, during that time Costa Rica didn't have an army and was still a fairly safe place. It's got a very highly educated workforce, 95% literacy rate, far greater than any other country in Central America, has been very politically stable, booming tourism industry. But I think the biggest challenge for them is they're operate almost like a European social democracy, but on a budget of a developing country. So what we're hoping to see is some more market openings, some more privatizations under CAFTA-DR. I think when you look overall at the region, CAFTA is a very open market. The tariffs are relatively low, even without the implementation of CAFTA-DR. The value-added tax, or sales tax they put on, are fairly low compared to the 20% rates you'll see in Europe. There's almost no import restrictions, standards similar to the U.S. Labeling and testing, not a problem. We use the UL label down here. There are a real variety of agents and distributors, qualified, I think, aggressive, hungry agents and distributors that companies can lock on to. So this is not a market that by any means has been saturated. Even though Spanish is the main language in each of the countries, there is a growing use of English. Many of the business leaders here have been educated in the U.S. When we look at opportunities in Central America, we can run down quite a list of items. These are just some of the basic opportunities we see, starting with automotive parts and running down through food processing and packaging equipment, which we expect to benefit from CAFTA, power generation. They always need more power here, hotel and restaurant equipment for tourism, telecommunications, construction, safety and security, franchising. There really are opportunities here run across the board. I'd be really remiss if I didn't mention that there are some challenges in Central America. I would say one of the biggest challenges that we have in Central America is security. There's still far too many weapons left over from the civil wars and internal conflicts in Central America. Gangs are very prevalent in the northern part of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. That's created many problems for the government. I think the security situation is getting better, but it's still something to pay attention to. Judicial reform is also a real problem. The judicial system here is very slow. It seems to favor local companies. We're working in terms of trying to implement more arbitration clauses and procedures here, but judicial reform is still a question. And I think if you looked overall and asked almost any U.S. company that had been here for a while what the biggest long-term challenge was, they'd say education. And I think that's something that each of the countries is looking at more and more, but it is a long-term challenge. If you look at a country like Honduras, the average education there, formal education, is 4.7 years. It's just not long enough for modern industries. There are some external forces that we look at within Central America. One, when we're complaining about the cost of oil and gas in the U.S., well, look at Central America and the DR, 100% dependent on imported oil. I mean, the costs are high in the U.S., they're even higher down here. They saw China's impact on the maquila sector as being very great. We lost quite a bit of manufacturing here, manufacturing jobs, but I think now with the prospect of CAFTA going into force, many of those jobs have been replaced, and we see some growth in the sector. Remittances are also a big thing in Central America. These are remittances from Central Americans living in the U.S., especially for El Salvador, Guatemala, and the Dominican Republic, each which has over $2 billion in remittances that come from their workers working in the U.S. and sending money back to their own countries. And this aids these countries to buy what I say is more U.S. goods and services. Within Central America, we have a variety of services that are offered by most other posts in the world, but we're also set up on a regional basis. We have 4 commercial officers in Central America, 20 local employees that support U.S. companies here, and the services that I have in bold are services that we offer on a regional basis. We're always happy to talk to you about not only the individual markets in Central America, but about the markets as a whole in Central America. We do have an exciting opportunity coming up for companies, which we call retail in Central America, where we'll be introducing new U.S. retail products to a variety of retailers in Central America. And I think if there's companies that have retail products they'd like to get down to Central America after this conference, if they'd send me an email, I'd be very happy to provide them more information on that. We also have organized ourselves in Central America on a regional industry sector basis. If you are in any of these regional industries here, we have a regional specialist that can talk to you about the market in Central America and provide you more information on opportunities within Central America. Just to sum up, what I'd like to say is that Central America is really at the market now. It's a great place to do business, and I think it's going to become even a much better market with CAFTA and the DR. Over 40% of the imports come from the U.S. The markets are growing. They're close to the U.S. The region is in general peaceful, democratic, and we expect it to stay that way. And I think what the countries are doing here are what a lot of countries in the world, especially smaller countries, are trying to do. They're trying to find their own place in the global economy. And I think CAFTA-DR will really help them to succeed. So with that, I'd like to conclude my comments and turn the mic over to Anthony Grasso, who will talk a little bit about how to make CAFTA work for your company. Anthony?
Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk to you a little more of the specifics of the agreement itself. Oops, something just went wrong. Sorry about that. And just to give you an overview of what I'll discuss, I'll first go over the U.S. free trade agreements in general, just give you background information on that. And then we'll go into the benefits of the Central American agreement, basically the duty benefits, when to use this agreement, and how to use this agreement. Now, the United States has entered into U.S. free trade agreements in order to open foreign markets to U.S. products. A large way this happens is because